Welcome. We appreciate you braving the storm and getting out here this morning for Huthwaite's Future Forum on Social Selling. My name is Greg Moore. I am the Managing Director for Huthwaite in Asia, and it's my privilege to be the host for this morning. This morning's forum is very different than the ones that I've led in the past. For the past 15 years, I've had the opportunity to present on a variety of topics for Huthwaite around the world. But those were usually fairly singular and focused. Huthwaite would conduct a bit of research, and then the forum's purpose was to present that research and perhaps the models or methodologies that came out of that. But today is different. Today is special in that we've assembled a group of panelists who have expertise, insights, and experience in both social selling and social media. And so we thought this topic would be one of high relevance given the research that we've just conducted and that we'll be presenting to you this morning. Collectively, the panelists that you'll be hearing from bring a very rich and broad experience in social media and social selling. They've got experience that is both regional and global in nature. They have B2B insights, B2C insights, B2B2C, and any other variety of letters and numbers you'd like to put together, they've done it. They've worked from the outside as consultants as well as from the inside, responsible for large change management initiatives. And so this morning really promises to be a very insightful morning on the topic of social selling. Now, I'd like to just maybe start with a quick introduction of what the agenda will look like today. It's a fairly simple and straightforward agenda. I'll spend the first few minutes just talking about some Huthwaite research, presenting to you some of the concepts that have emerged out of our global sales pulse survey and the impact that the changes and shifts that we see in sales and marketing. The focal point for this morning's session is really the panelists, so we'll spend a good hour there. And then I've invited our CEO, John Golden, to spend a few minutes sharing some concluding remarks before we wrap up. I'll also be sharing a few door prizes for some lucky winners, so please make sure you stick around to the very end. And what would we be if we didn't participate in social media ourselves this morning, given our topic? So we've set up this hashtag, which is #HWFF, which is tracking the content and comments from today. So if you're on Twitter and you'd like to participate, normally as a presenter I would be saying, please silence your phones, pay attention to me, and let's have a good session. But today is very different. Today I'm encouraging you to have your phones out, to participate in the dialogue. This room holds about 100, and there are thousands of more people outside these walls who have an interest in what we're talking about. This dialogue began a couple of months ago with our sold-out forums in Sydney and Melbourne, where we were talking about the very same thing, social selling, and the impact it's having on sales organizations and marketing organizations alike. So we'll continue on that dialogue today. Over here to my left, your right, there is a live Twitter feed. So you can have an opportunity to make observations, share key points, participate in the dialogue, which some of you are doing already. Again, it's #HWFF. You can also use this to communicate with the panelists who will be tracking the online dialogue from their seats up here. So if you see the panelists on their tablets or smartphones, they're not multitasking, they're participating in the online dialogue. Twice a year, Huthwaite conducts what we call a Global Sales Pulse Survey. This survey generally has about 5,000 participants that participate each 6 months. Many of you may have participated in our Global Sales Pulse Survey before. Just to give you a point of comparison, 5,000 is 30% more participation than the whole of the research that went into the Challenger model from the Sales Executive Council. So it's a significant amount of research that's happening every 6 months, trying to tap into the minds of both sales leaders and sales executives, as well as business executives. And some interesting things began to emerge recently. I'm drawing from our Global Sales Pulse Survey of 2012, and be sharing with you some intra-year shifts. In 2011 and 2012, we started to see quite a shift that was occurring in how long buyers were waiting until they engaged with the live salesperson. Now, we first spotted this trend in 2005. We were one of the very first when we published an article in Harvard Business Review about the end of sales and marketing as we know it. And we said that these worlds were converging and that social media would have a tremendous impact on both sales and marketing. And in 2011, that trend really accelerated. In 2012, we saw really people bringing their consumer behaviors into the B2B world. And for a long time, those who were in the B2B sale, even today there's probably still some resistors, were holding on to the notion that if you're in the B2B sale, it's very different from the B2C, and therefore I can cling to some of my traditional ways of selling, be it relationship or whatever. But you have to remember that while every consumer is not a business executive, every executive is a consumer. And so it can be a bit naive to consider the fact that these people are going to have one pattern for buying in their personal purchases and not somehow bring that into their professional purchases. If we look at the data up here, the first data point I'd like to share with you is that the respondents that reported that they were waiting longer in their buying process to engage a seller shifted from 35% in Q2 to 41%. Now Forrester put out a survey recently to say that 70% of the buying process is complete, according to the people that they surveyed. The corporate executive board has that number a little bit lower, 57%. So whether you call it 57 or 70%, we're talking somewhere 2/3 of the buying process is complete in the corporate buying world before they're engaging a live seller. And this is showing that in just 6 months, there were more people joining that category of people who were waiting to call a live seller to get information. The next data point I wanted to share with you is the number of buyers who report use of social media in their buying process. A shift from 24% to 34%. Now while this is 10 points, it actually represents a 40% uptick in this category. So a significant change in just 6 months of people saying we're using social media to better understand and make good decisions, which also might explain the shift that we're seeing in that first data point. One interesting point I'll share with you on this study comes from the sales organization and sales leaders saying that they're finding that business acumen is becoming an increasingly important part of their role. Here in Q2, already a high number at 79%, moving in Q4 into the mid-80s. Now why would that be? Why would business acumen hit the radar of these respondents in this kind of manner? Well, it's probably best described and explained by the two previous facts, which say if buyers are waiting 2/3 or before they engage with a seller, then a lot of the corporate information that a seller would provide, a lot of the product information that a seller would provide, is already discovered, has already been hashed out with colleagues and peers in the industry or around the world. So by the time they contact a seller, that buyer is probably looking not for product and company information, but more for commercial information. How can the seller and the seller solution have business impact? How can they support that buyer's business drivers? How can they have or help the buyer measuring their return on investment? Those are things that require a level of business acumen. And it's a conversation that's very foreign to a lot of salespeople who are very comfortable in their world of talking about products and their business. If we take a look now at social media and the upheaval that's been occurring in the past 2 years, some significant statistics. LinkedIn is now reporting 225 million members. They were founded in 2002, and it took 9 years to get the first 100 million. It took just 18 months to double that to 200 million. And now they add 2 members every second of the day, every day of the year. Twitter claims that 181,000 users have social media in their bio. Very interesting statistic, considering that in 2009, that number was only 16,000. So a growth of tenfold. Clearly a burgeoning industry, an area of interest from the population. Weibo, which is China's Twitter, has twice as many users as Twitter, and reports that 1 out of every 5 people in China that's on the internet is active on Weibo. They claim that 200 million people are active on Twitter every month. This is 3% of the world's population. So it's not a small number at all. Now, if I can tweet every thought that comes to mind and my stream of consciousness goes out on Twitter, does that make me an effective social seller? Well, we think not. There's an interesting study that comes from e-marketing that says 33% of the US internet users claim to have ended a relationship with a brand or a business because of too many posts, too many status updates, and just the barrage of information. So clearly there are some best practices that we need to embrace in social selling. And clearly there are some ineffective practices that we want to learn and we want to avoid to be effective social sellers. Well, I'd like to turn now to a report that we look at every year at Huthwaite. In October of each year, the Sales Management Association puts out a report that studies sales leaders, sales ops folks, and business executives. In this report, the respondents said 96% of themselves participate very actively on LinkedIn. 6 hours a week, on average, they're spending on LinkedIn. 80% of the respondents claim that their sales force would be more productive if they embraced some of these social media platforms. We see more than half of them with the expectation, the forecast that they will increase their engagement with several social media platforms. And yet, 2/3 of the respondents, which is, there are 140 firms that participated in this survey, 2/3 of those said there is no social media strategy in place for the sales organization. Now, what kind of problems could that lead to? Well, let's first look at penetration of social media in Asia. The 24 countries here represented by this study comes, or this data comes from a Singapore-based firm called We Are Social, and they track social media usage. And they've just recently recalibrated how they study users. Rather than just users of social media, it's really more of the active users of social media. This has to do with penetration in each of the markets of social media. Asia, represented here by the blue line in the center, is pretty consistent with the global average, 23%. Singapore sits over here much higher at 50% penetration by social media. Now you'd expect that in a smaller market like Hong Kong, Singapore, markets that are more mature, but you have to ask the question, if a business is not formulated a social media strategy, if salespeople are not clear about how they can best engage in social selling using social media, are they missing critical opportunities to connect with and influence buyers? We think the answer to that is yes. The problem can be represented here in that most of formalized social media efforts are focused up here on the top with the marketing, PR, and comms groups, really the vast majority, and its sales doesn't hit until way down here at 11%. So much of what a corporation is focusing on in terms of its social media efforts, again, are focused on marketing, not sales. The problem is exacerbated by the fact that salespeople are not receiving adequate training. Going back to the Sales Management Association survey, here we see that an overwhelming majority, 68%, as represented in the green parts right here, claim, when asked the question, have you received sufficient training to help you use social media? They said no. Coming to the conclusion that really salespeople do not have sufficient training and have a general lack of understanding about social media. Well, the implication of that can be represented here. Now, this data comes from Altimeter Group, which is a Silicon Valley, California-based firm. This is looking at the levels of satisfaction on different levels that social media can impact. And if you look at the top up here, brand positioning, brand awareness, these are areas that marketing would generally be most interested in. When you think about what are salespeople interested in? Well, salespeople like to have incoming leads. They like those leads to be warm, and they like those leads to buy from them as soon as possible. It's the shortest path from today to revenue, and from revenue to commissions. So those are the things that social media, or that sellers would really be looking for from social media. And yet, down here we see fairly low level rankings, or actually high levels of dissatisfaction. in this category. Now, left unchecked, what we could end up with is a world of buyers that are looking for insights about various companies, various products, various solutions, and a sales world that would, in a traditional mode, be very equipped to provide those insights. But in today's world, are increasingly finding themselves incapable or ill-equipped to engage and influence those buyers in that first 57, 60 some odd, 70% of the buying process. Now, why does it matter? Well, I can tell you that that might depend on your functional role in your organization. About a third of you here today are CEOs, MDs, country managers, top executives in your business. About a third of you are from the marketing organization, digital marketing managers, regional heads of marketing, and the other third are from the sales function, all the way from frontline sellers who are quite interested in improving their social selling skills, on up to regional heads of sales. And I could argue that regardless of which of those functions you come from, whether it's executives, marketing, sales, all of those groups should be interested in customers, revenue, high performance. Well, this study here is one of my favorites. It comes from Aberdeen Group, which is a fantastic research firm. And they claim to be the research firm that represents the end user, and they try to catch buyers in action as they're making decisions. Millions subscribe to their research on everything from business intelligence to sales effectiveness and sales strategy. And at Huthwaite, we quite like some of the data that they come out with. Here we see some empirical data that says, from Aberdeen Group, those users of social media who embrace social selling have a higher team attainment of quota. Those of you who are managers or business executives, whom among you would not want that result? Customer renewal rates higher. Sales forecast accuracy higher. Is there anybody in here who heads up a sales team who would not like to see higher sales forecast accuracy? And a higher percent of sales reps achieving quota. Now, I'm a managing director, but I grew up through the sales and sales management rank, and over the past 20 years, I can't think of a single time that I wouldn't have wanted to see 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of these with my team and with myself. Just quickly, anecdotally, I'll share with you that when I shared this data within my organization, there was one seller in particular who was not a big fan of social media and social selling. Had a lot of misconceptions about it. But when he saw the data, he said, I don't want to be in that green category. I have to find a way to get into the blue category. So he pushed aside his misconceptions about social media. He got involved in several platforms, and he got in the game. He was, for the first 2-3 years of his employment at Huthwaite, a solid performer, but always maybe just hovering at or below quota. This year, now that he's embraced social selling, he is exceeding and leading the team and above quota. So I think causation or correlation, difficult to say, but clearly in one seller's case, he found, as thousands of people have done in that blue category, that social selling provides a seller with an opportunity to engage in a sales process as collaborative and dynamic as the modern day buying process. It allows them to connect with buyers, to find cross-sell opportunities, and to really build their own personal brand and their careers. So, with that as a backdrop, I want to then now bring up our panelists. We're going to be talking about, is social media and social selling taking root? And what evidence do we have about the best practices? How can we embrace social selling in our own organizations and reap the results? John Golden, who is the president and CEO of Huthwaite. He's author of numerous white papers and articles on sales and marketing. He's a frequent contributor to TV and radio business reports, author of Amazon's best-selling book, Winning the Bout for Sales, and soon to publish a new book on social selling called Social Upheaval. He's also my boss, so please be very kind to him, because if I didn't invite him, I wouldn't have a job. John Golden. Next, I'd like to invite Andrew Chow. Andrew is a social media strategist, speaker and author of Social Media 247. His insights into social media strategy, media management, and entrepreneurship have made him a choice selection for workshops and public speaking engagements across Asia. Andrew's career has seen him work with an array of clients, including large organizations like AXA Insurance, HSBC, and Singtel. He's also got extensive experience working with SMB and brings unique insights around B2C and B2B selling within the SMB space. He's working on his new book as well, Social Media 365. Welcome, Andrew Chow. Thank you, Andrew. Our third panelist is Miss Crystal Quek. Ms. Crystal Quek was featured in The Guardian's Top 10 Digital Strategists to Watch in 2013. Crystal is a digital native with a passion for strategy, currently leading the social business efforts for Samsung in Asia. She works through digital marketing managers in each of the region countries to deploy the social media strategy. She contributes regularly to the Huffington Post, the Harvard Business Review, and is determined to help people more efficiently navigate the social era. Crystal's previous roles have seen her lead the social media efforts of Global Social Marketing Manager and advise on online strategy with some of her previous employers. Welcome, Crystal Quek. Thank you for being here. Last but not least, we welcome Mr. Marco Ryan to the stage. Marco was recently honored by Forbes with the title of one of the top 10 most influential people in marketing consulting in the world. With more than 15 years experience in running profitable e-commerce businesses, leading digital marketing teams, creating and implementing digital strategies, Marco is currently the Managing Director of Accenture Interactive. Marco's expertise lies in the area of helping the C-suite understand how to cope with the digital disruption and what actions organizations can take to drive sustainable change and business results. He is a regular speaker at conferences, events, he lectures part-time at a UK business school, and is currently working on a book on digital disruption. Mr. Ryan, welcome and thanks for being part of our panel. Again, good morning and welcome, panelists. Glad to have you here. Let's jump right into it if we can, and maybe let's start at a high level with some definitional points of view. What is social selling? John, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. I think when you look at social selling, you need to look at it from two perspectives. I mean, the social selling, but more importantly, I think it's really social buying. And in all of our research, we look at things from the buyer perspective. And social selling has been really driven by buyer behavior and changes in buyer behavior. So today's buyers are, as Greg mentioned earlier, taking a lot of consumer behaviors into how they make purchases. So they're going online in their professional networks and LinkedIn, discussing issues pertinent to their businesses. They're going to their networks to ask about solutions, discuss those. So social selling is really going and finding where your buyers are today, where they're networking, where they're discussing issues of relevance to them, and engaging them on their territory. So it's really a question of social selling is selling when you're actually moving to new venues, online venues, and you're going to where your buyer is today, and you're engaging with them how they want to be engaged with, and you're facilitating their self-discovery and their buying process. So it's almost like, think of social selling as it really is social buying and how you're reacting and how you're engaging with the buyer in their new venues.
Thank you, John. Let's move down the panelists there. Andrew, Crystal, Mark, we'd like to hear from you as well on this topic.
Okay, to me, social selling is really three words. Long-term relationship. It is a destination, it is an ambition, just like one of the slides that you showed. Social selling don't really happen overnight. I think a lot of us understand selling, we just don't understand social. Because social is not really a brand attribute of any company. I've not really seen any mission or mission statement of any company who has the word social in it. So, in order to understand social selling, we need to understand social media. And it's really, I like to always mention 3 C's. You need to create content that is relevant to the user, have meaningful conversation, and then build meaningful connections. And over time, social selling will happen. So, today I think the focus is both selling and being social. So it's going to be very insightful as we go on.
Thank you, Andrew. Crystal.
Okay, so when I think about social selling, right, I think about a couple of things. You're trying to accumulate social intelligence to build up social capital and then accumulate significant social influence. Because I think that is what we are trying to do right now, right? Intelligence, capital, and influence. And it's about building stronger offline relationships with your buyers, using the help of social media to become more efficient in your content marketing efforts, in bridging and getting more efficient leads, for instance. So I think, yeah, it's a couple of these things. So that's my take.
Thank you. Marco.
The great thing about going last is you can just say all of the for me, a number of things. I think it's a mistake to think that social selling is just social media applied to selling. I think the change that's happened is that social media has emancipated the consumer. So the power is in the hand of the consumer. So social selling is a number of things. One of which is it's understanding the consumer better and how that impacts what you want to sell and how you sell. So a slightly trite example is if social media is knowing sort of who you know or expanding who you know, social selling is what you know about who you know. So a large amount of it is about relevancy. And if you like, what we start to call in Accenture the R factor, is this idea about being totally relevant. So relationships and selling is about relationships, and social media is about relationships. So it's a really happy marriage, right? But it's about how you drive that relevancy across that sales cycle, if you want to use traditional terms. Customers don't think so in those terms anymore. So the idea that you can be always on, always selling, always relevant, and always having that relationship.
Crystal, do you have some views on this?
I think it's a very interesting point because, wait, let me adjust the mic a bit better. Okay, so how does social media fit into the whole social selling cycle? That's the question, right? So I see it as being more efficient in coming up with a lot of varied data sets, for instance, to understand your buyers better, to plug into existing CRM databases, for instance, and then understanding how that can give you interesting prospects and leads to get a lot more efficient with selling to your customers. So it's about understanding the customer better, and I think that's what John was saying earlier, which I absolutely agree with, because I think the crux of the whole matter is to be a lot better at accumulating social intelligence with all the data that we have today. So, yeah.
Andrew, anything to add on this?
If you look at social selling as a strategy, actually social selling happens the minute we are on social media. Now, the success on how well we sell really depends on our brand offline. So if our brand is not authoritative offline, social media can't help us. So the minute when we are online, we position ourselves as a brand on social media, and selling happens eventually by being relevant to the people that you're reaching out to. So are we producing content based on our customers' agenda or our agenda? So, don't think campaign anymore, think conversation. So don't think competition, think collaboration. So it's a change in behavior first on the part of the seller, and then buyers respond to you. I think it's one thing to know where our buyers are, but it's another thing to know what they want. So listening is a great skill on social media.
If you're engaged in selling, your end result is selling, right? And the fact is that your buyer happens to be online now and happens to operate in different ways. But just backing up for a moment, I think one of the toughest things around social selling for sellers is that it actually requires an increased or a new set of disciplines. And we have forever, preached about listening skills and salespeople developing listening skills. But now you have to take those listening skills and you have to evolve them almost to how researchers operate. So if your buyer is online and they're discussing things and there are things happening in their industry, you have to understand the business of their business. So you have to understand what's happening in their industry and their segment. You have to understand what's happening what's relevant to their business, what their strategy, what their strategic objectives are. Then you have to understand what the individual buyers, what's of most relevance to them, and that takes an incredible amount of discipline, because it means you're actually now having to become a researcher and really understand. And those listening skills that you've developed when you were face to face, you actually have to evolve those to where you're not face to face. You're actually looking at things that are written and things that are said by people online, and that's an incredibly hard discipline for a lot of salespeople, because you've got to back up and do the research. Then you have to almost be a micro-marketer in terms of you have to know how to engage and how to message and how to get your message out in a way that can engage your buyers. So it's research. It's you've got to become a part researcher, micro-marketer, and you've got to have incredible business acumen today in order to be able to even get into the game. Because if you just get online and start trying to insert yourself in conversations, it's going to be like, and I always compare it to, you wouldn't go to a physical networking event like this and walk in the door and just start shouting random things at people, right? Because everyone think you're crazy, right? And you'd soon be that person off in the corner with a huge gap around them. But there's a lot of people who think that behavior is acceptable online. They think, okay, I'm going to get engaged on social media, I'm going to social sell, so I'm just going to throw out random headlines and stuff, and they wonder why they get no reaction from it. So everything has to be done in an extremely thoughtful manner. And it starts with listening, and those listening skills now have to be adapted to a social media environment.
Great. Any other panelists care to comment on that question? Please, Crystal.
No, I think it's very interesting what John said, because this is a question I often get, let's say in Samsung, for instance. So a lot of people are trying to come to terms with the whole idea of social media. How do we use it? How do we be part of the conversation? How do we become more efficient? How do we let it achieve our business outcomes? And one question I always ask them is this: do you understand why you're going on to social media? So if the first words that come to your mind when I say the word social media, if those words are Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, you've gotten it all wrong, because social media is about using social platforms to understand where the user is, what they're looking out for, what content do they want to receive, and who do they want to network with. I think that's very important. And being on social media platforms without a clear strategy in mind, not understanding your brand objectives, your marketing objectives, your business objectives, is a sure fail, because that's a very tactical measure and you're not thinking about the whole strategic outcome, which is what John has said. So just to add on to that point.
Thank you very much. Marco, please.
Just a couple of additional observations. I think that the buyer is often more informed now than previously. So what has changed, if you like, is that the sales process, or what you have to do, if you like, in traditional selling about educating the buyer, has disappeared, because the buyer is often more informed than you are, probably about your own products or companies, because they'll have looked and read all the various reviews. So that dynamic changes. It's a point that was made earlier on about intelligence. I think that, and I don't want to sort of, please don't quote me on this on Twitter. But,
too late for that.
I'm not too late. I'm not sure that, that I think some people refer to social selling as sort of sales 2.0, right? And I'm not sure that's that helpful. But I think if you think of it in the light of that, actually this is really about intelligence and the sales process, to John's point earlier, which is really about research, understanding. A good salesman will do a lot of research. What are we doing in a traditional sales process? We're trying to build relationships, we're trying to understand, we're trying to influence. And social media allows you to do that anonymously. So you can sit and read and listen and understand and research and be informed, so you can gain social intelligence before you open that dialogue. So to John's point, actually, you could, walk into a room very well informed about all the people in the room, right? In terms of if you use social intelligence. You still wouldn't shout out loud, right? Hopefully not. So I think that if you think of social media, Crystal's point, it's not a platform, it is an approach, a methodology, a way of thinking, it's a philosophy, it's not just Facebook or LinkedIn. It's not simply a platform. You need the platforms, but what you're using them for and what information you get out of them, what you do with that information, that's about insight. So really for salespeople, social selling is as much about social insight as it is about any other criteria.
Just in the spirit of embracing social media, Laura, have any questions come up on the Twitter feed that we want to field with the panelists?
No questions.
Any questions from the live audience here right now that you'd like to direct to the panelists? We're talking about what is social selling, what are the effective behaviors or ineffective behaviors of sellers in a social selling online kind of format. I also just wanted to ask, is Miss Bernie Kwa here today? There she is. Okay, terrific. Miss Bernie Kwa is from Sketchpost Studio, and we invited her here today to create a visual depiction of the forum as it's happening. So she's creating this in real time. So beyond Twitter, at any point if you wanted to just walk over and take a photo and use it for Instagram or any of your favorite social media sites, you're welcome to do that. I want to point out too that doing things like the live Twitter feed or the sketch post is seeking engagement with the audience. And when you think about the risks that are associated with that, when we talked about, do we want to have a live Twitter feed and then we worried, what if nobody posts? Could be a little bit embarrassing. What if people don't like what we're talking about? Well, that's the transparency that's associated with social selling. And that's probably part of the reason that sellers get a little anxious or nervous about engaging and participating in the dialogue. So let's maybe move to our next section and really talk about skills and technology. I mentioned in the introduction, panelists, that part of the Sales Management Association survey, 96% said they use LinkedIn, 80% believe their sales force will be more effective if they embrace social selling and so forth, and yet very little in place of social media strategy. What are the risks here? Andrew, do you want to take the lead on that?
The risk, I don't see any risks actually. I think the challenge we have is besides having adequate training, can I have a show of hands on how many of you actually feel that you have adequate training in terms of social media in your organization? Can I see your hands up?
There we go.
Yeah, we have about less than 5%. So even with enough training, there is still a challenge from the organization where I think the guidelines and the usage policies are important because I think you have less challenges where the whole organization is not social media savvy. The minute when the organization becomes social media savvy, you have more challenges. You have staff who are overly creative. Yeah, and that may put your brand on a different platform for the wrong reason. So I think it's training, continuous training, social learning. So from social selling to social learning. And second thing, it's about governance. I think those who work in those who work in the governance department will have more challenges now to formulate policies, not to limit your staff, but to give them more freedom and to set the guidelines of creativity. Now that sounds.
May I comment? These are non-owned channels that we're talking about. So whereas within the organization, marketing-owned channels are well within the control of the business, but can corporations really dictate how people should behave in non-owned channels?
Because social media has not really any moderator, you can't dictate any behavior outside the organization. So in fact, you have to observe and research on the behavior and try to adapt to it. I think that is part of listening skills, that is part of your social media analytics, is to mirror the behavior of your buyer. So, and that again has to come from a change of mindset.
Anything to add, panelists?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things here to crop up. One of my favorite ones is that whenever you have an evolution or revolution, particularly a technology-based one, is people will still fall into the trap of thinking that technology will fix everything. And so, we spend a lot of time explaining to people that, quite frankly, if you can't sell offline, you won't be able to sell online either. Because I mean, you still need to know, you still need to have fundamental selling skills. The technology is not going to fix that for you. And in fact, it probably just exacerbate it. The other thing, as you were saying, some of the pitfalls is obviously, you know, a lot of sellers, you know, as you go through your selling experience, you know, you have those nightmare sales calls, you know, where you fall flat in your face. But thankfully, generally speaking, you know, it's in front of 1 or 2 people. And, you know, you can avoid ever going back there, and you hope that over time that they forget that story and will continue to, you know, tell it at parties. But in social media, I mean, the other thing you got to remember is that once you engage online, whatever you say is there pretty much permanently. So again, I go back to the thing that discipline is absolutely critical. And you know, as Marco mentioned earlier, I mean, the best salespeople have an incredible amount of discipline, and I think you got to bring that discipline online. But you also got to remember that if you're salespeople or if you're a seller and you don't have fundamental selling skills that you can apply in an offline world, you're not suddenly going to be able to leverage technology to make up for those shortfalls, because it's just not going to happen. And the other thing, and because when we're talking about if you can't sell offline, you can't sell online, somebody else said to me recently, the other thing is that if you don't have really good social graces offline, you can have them online either. So you know, you want to be careful that as you let your people engage in social media, you better make sure that they are skilled in doing it, because otherwise they now have a massive audience to exponentially screw up.
Marco, please.
I think one of the challenges that we have in ASEAN is that a lot of the organisations, and I'm not now talking about the MNCs, but a lot of the organisations are still quite traditional, right? They might be hierarchical in structure, they might be family owned, and there's often a generational difference between the people, if you like, leading the companies and those actually, you know, on the whole face doing the daily work, right? I don't think that's too contentious. I think that's a fairly accurate reflection of some of the challenges that we have. Now, that means that actually there is a level of discomfort, sometimes in leadership, right, around what social media is, what it can do. They're not familiar, they don't understand. They don't understand the benefits. To them, it does just mean Facebook or LinkedIn. And why would I want to tweet, you know, that I'm having eggs for breakfast? You know, who's interested, right? So I think that one of the things is that we've seen, firstly, that you have to understand that social media is really about influence, and understanding that the way that influence works 2 ways. So there are a number of things that you can do in organisations, whether it's things like reverse buddying, you know, reverse mentoring, where you've got younger people in the organisation helping leadership understand that digital native world, what really happens, why it's important, why there's traction, why it can help. I think there's plenty of case studies, there's clearly plenty of books about to be released about social selling, that there are some clear, you know, models that can be used, there's some clear ROI, there are some clear indicators now, there's enough fact out there that will help convert people who are perhaps from a world which is more around show me the ROI, show me the metrics, show me why you have to invest, right? They want certainty. Of course, one of the things that social media means is it's uncertain. It's unpredictable. And so I think the way that you can help in organisations bring this to life is to try and make some of that uncertainty more certain, right? And that is through governance, and that is through discipline, and that is through strategy. And strategy doesn't have to be overly complicated. I'm about to do myself out of a job, but you know, it doesn't have. You don't have to employ Accenture or Bain or McKinsey to write your social strategy. Some of it can be quite simple, and it is about starting simple. We've heard a number of comments earlier about listening. You know, if you, I was taught when I first came into consulting that you have, you know, 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. I suggest you use them in those order, in that ratio. And I think that's probably quite a good ratio for how you approach social media. You should listen twice as long as you engage, and you should certainly look probably as long as you listen. So understand first. That will help in terms of the mitigating some of the risks that could occur. That helps to mitigate some of the wildcards that go on. And I think when the wildcards do happen, in a digital world, kind of failing fast isn't necessarily a bad thing. So as long as you understand what's happened. So that idea of taking away the learning about what mistakes you made and not repeating it, putting that back into your governance procedures, all right? If you have that governance in place, it does mean that you can quickly act on things that aren't necessarily on message. So I think that you have to get comfortable with the fact that some things won't be perfect and some things will go wrong. And that's okay, providing that you have mechanisms in place to deal with them and catch it.
Thank you. Please, Crystal, go ahead.
So I just have one more point to add, because I think what everyone said is absolutely spot on. I think technology changes really fast. That is undeniable, right? Everything there's always something new happening every day on social media. But fundamental human behavior doesn't change so fast. Fundamental human behavior, being the behavior of the buyer, for instance, you want to use social media platforms to become more knowledgeable about the stuff and about skills and about processes within the buying cycle to make better decisions for themselves, for the organization. And I think that's very important because fundamentally, as humans, right, we want to be better, faster, stronger, wiser. And we are using technology right now to help us achieve all of these goals. So if you can understand that, you can definitely become a great salesperson, whether it's online or offline, and become more efficient in reaching out to these consumers. Because that's what the buyer really wants, I think. Knowledge, and how can you plug the gaps to fulfill their need.
Crystal, maybe I could ask you,
Yes.
You're responsible for social business within Samsung. What are the skills that you're seeking to develop within your sales or marketing organizations? Do they differ on the B2B part versus a B2B2C? Can you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, sure. So, Samsung, right, is a really huge organization. I've just been here actually for just 3 months. And I'm looking after across Samsung Electronics across 5 product groups. So there's the B2B part, of course, and there's the B2C part. And of course, there is the B2B2C part. So it's, kind of complex, right? And I think in that sense, we're definitely looking at seeing how LinkedIn, for instance, can help our salespeople and our B2B teams get more efficient in harnessing content, in harnessing engagement, in harnessing insights, social insights, to see how we can better reach out to prospective buyers, to prospective users, etc. We're also looking at seeing how we can build an existing platform that plugs in varied data sets across the organizations to better understand our social context. So it's about getting great social content intelligence, filtering everything down properly, and after that, using this to translate into actionable insights. I think that's a brief summary of what I'm trying to achieve, which is very vague, but feel free to ask me questions later.
There's more from what was a very straightforward traditional kind of sales process into now something that's much more complex, a new set of skills and behaviors that sellers need to have. Is there a risk of sellers becoming disenfranchised, or is there a different kind of profile that organizations should be looking for now? I open that to any of the panelists.
I think I noticed that, okay, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think 20% of the community on social media make up 80% of the voices on social media. It means you're going to see the same people, the same thought leaders, the same influencers, the same buyers, asking questions all the time, giving you suggestions all the time. I think the challenges for the organization is to seek out the rest of the 80% who are just bystander listener. There is one bank, I won't say who. I think they have a fantastic Facebook strategy. They don't talk anything about themselves. They just talk anything that's current affair. So for example, if it's Chinese New Year, they will talk about your ang pao money. If it is 8th of March, they talk about women. So why would a bank be talking about ang pao money, be talking about women? It's essentially they want to identify with the buyer, with the community. They want to know what do you really want to talk about. So, and how can we come in to add value to what you are concerned about? I think if you can do that, you can find the magic formula of connecting or being authentic. I think that's the word. Being an authentic brand, you wouldn't find social selling that much of a challenge because authenticity really attracts a lot of people to you.
Thank you. I want to do one more question and then we'll check the Twitter feed and go to the audience for just a few minutes. Gamification is certainly something that's no longer can be ignored, as the population that has grown up with the internet and social media regard gaming as integral to their lives. What role does gamification play in social selling, and can playing games really lead to improved business results? Marco, this is an area of expertise for you. Can you comment on that, please?
Sure. So I think the first thing is, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with what gamification is.
Right into the microphone for us, please. Just
Can you hear me?
nice and loud. There we go.
Okay. So just to make sure everyone's on the same page about what gamification is. Gamification is taking the sort of the secret sauce of gaming, the things that make it sort of viral and addictive, and things like leaderboards and avatars and rankings and all that sort of stuff, and taking that and applying it to a really sticky, tough business issue that will drive an outcome. So gamification works when you've got something that hasn't been solved through the traditional way, or where you're trying to change behavior and you're trying to make it fun and engaging. It's a great fit for social selling for a number of reasons. Firstly is the social nature of it. So the fact that you can go viral, that you can create visibility, that you can create engagement, that you can change behaviors, that you can witness and moderate and influence and be involved in that process. So it isn't something, I think, that is just the latest marketing trend, right? It's looked at traditionally within, I guess, B2C organizations as something the marketing department will try, a campaign, we'll do this, we'll put something gamified around it. It's not games for business, so we need to get that clear from the get-go. So where it applies to social selling, I think you've got a number of things. Certainly, if you think about if Accenture's doing gamification, right, it must be something that is enterprise and scalable, because we don't get involved in something that's not. Okay, so one of the things that we're seeing is that actually 70 to 80% of the most successful gamified applications are actually within inside the enterprise, and they are fantastic for talent recruitment, talent management, sales training. I've even seen one application which is about how to make the budgeting process more interesting. And let's face it, those of us been through a budgeting process, and then that's as dull as it gets, right? So I think that you can look at gamification as a way to elevate something which can be quite repetitive or mundane or boring or dull, or where you've got resistance, and think about using that as a way to make it much more engaging, right? Most of us, I think, are probably on LinkedIn. You've all been, therefore, party willingly or not to some form of gamification. Most of us probably have been on TripAdvisor. That's a great gamified website. So it is as simple, it can be as simple as sort of leaderboards, that's great for sales. It can be as simple as visibility or providing sort of reputation, it's great for sales. For people who are more engaged or more successful. It can be about engagement, it can be about learning, great for sales. So you get the message, it can be something that you can do inside the organization. Externally, there are, and I can provide endless case studies if people are interested, there are case study after case study after case study of B2B, of B2C, of B2E, of B2G, I'm running out of letters, where gamification has been used to drive tangible business outcomes. So I think if you think that you want to mix something that transforms behavior, buying behavior, learning, training behavior, into a way that is fun and engaging, and that will deliver a tangible business outcome, then gamification is something you should consider.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please, Andrew.
I think one of the ways you can quickly get on the game of gamification is really to do crowdsourcing. Starbucks has the excellent example of asking the whole world to give them ideas on how to improve their business. So I think within a few months they have almost 100,000 ideas. Now why would a brand like Starbucks want our ideas to improve their business? Why would they want our ideas? I think ideas is a good word. Instead of saying feedback, complaints, comments, I think ideas is a great word to use to substitute all this. But more importantly, when you submit an idea to your brand and they make you vote for it or invite your friends to vote for it, that itself is a friendly competition. And really, in essence, it's about having friendly competition. It's about seeing how high up you are in terms of popularity. And if you contribute a great idea, I bet that you would log on every day to see how highly ranked the idea is, and how many fans actually vote for you. So I think if you can create a kind of buzz around your brand, you're going to grow your community. And when you have critical mass, just like going to the gym, you start to build critical mass. You know, I think we need to work very hard to build our mass. Then we can talk about analytics, we can talk about segmentation. So it's really about being creative, try crowdsourcing. I think it's really fun. If you have some challenges, we can talk offline.
Let's see if we can take one question from the audience. Is there anybody want to raise their hand, use their outdoor voice, and boom their question up to the panelists here? Greater risk and resistance to change as their 4 main reasons for not engaging. So, aren't you concerned about these things? And we've got a lot of CEOs in the audience today. Is there any advice that you can share to help them overcome some of these concerns?
No, I mean personally, no, I'm not concerned about it at all, because there's actually some other research that's been done recently that says that that buyers have greater are developing greater trust in organizations where the senior leadership do have a presence on social media, because just along with everything that's been said here, it's all about, you know, transparency and relationship building. And I mean, nowadays, if you don't have that kind of presence, it's almost becoming a negative by not having the presence, because you're starting to wonder, well, why does that, you know, why does that CEO, why does that senior person not want to engage with the rest of the world on? Why don't they have a presence? Don't they have anything interesting to say? I mean, there's also research to say that CEOs and senior leaders that blog on a regular basis actually, again, can build greater levels of trust in buyers in that organization, because they start to feel like they, you know, have some kind of relationship with the organization, that they understand you better. So I think it's absolutely critical. I think that people are missing the boat in a big way by not developing that. And it is that whole, it gets back to that whole idea of building a personal brand. I mean, because that's what you've got to do nowadays. You've got to build an online brand, because that's how people are viewing you. There's a tendency to think, you know, especially as a salesperson, right, that when you engage with a potential buyer, you assume that they, correctly, that they're going to research your organization, right? You know, they're going to look into your product and look into your organization. But what a lot of sellers miss is the fact that nowadays they're not just researching the organization, they're going to research you as well. So if they go and research you online, and up pops a load of great information, they see that you belong to interesting groups, that you maybe have blogged about issues in their industry, that people seem to you know, follow, take note of what you say. There's a credentialing process that takes place. So you've now just accelerated the credentialing process that once upon a time you may have had to do over a period of time and meetings and all of that. And vice versa, if they go online and find out nothing about you, you've no presence, you don't even have your picture on LinkedIn, you know, I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth now. If you pop up and you no picture on LinkedIn, you're like, I wonder why they have no picture. But it's having the opposite effect. And I think the same goes, you know, for sales. I think you have to develop that online presence, online brand, because again, I mean, I go back to what I said at the very beginning, that I wouldn't think of this as, you know, sales 2.0. Think of it as buyer 2.0. I mean, you've got to facilitate how your buyer wants their information and how your buyer wants to go through their process. And so part of that is they want to understand who you are and how you think and what your, you know, and what your views are on things that are important to them. So if you don't have that, and if don't have that presence and you're not giving it to them the way they want it, which is often nowadays is through social media, through online presence, through personal brand, you know, then you're crossing over to where you're sort of saying to the buyer, which is never a very good strategy, is I don't actually care how you, you know, what you feel. I don't care how you want to do things. I'm going to do them the way I want to do them, and you're going to deal with it. And traditionally that hasn't been a particularly successful approach to sales, and I wouldn't advocate it now.
Thank you. Please, Marco.
Yeah, I think that a CEO has at least 3 types of buyer. Right? There's the buyer who actually buys their product or service. There's the buyer who is the shareholder or the analyst in the city, depending on the type of organisation. There's the buyer who's inside the organisation, i.e. the employee. And you need to be relevant to all 3. So I sit on an advisory board for a large travel group in Europe. And the CEO there has just done the largest single sort of capital placement, about 1.6 billion UK pounds recently. And one of the things that was cited by the analysts was, that they felt that she was relevant to the business, that they trusted in her strategy and her vision because it was clear and articulated. And it was very transparent. It was shared through both social media internally, it was shared with social media with analysts, and it was shared with end customers, on social media. Now, that's a particular example of one CEO who's actually very out there, very engaged, very sort of digitally active, but it actually had a fundamental impact on the perception in the market and helped her save and turn around her company. So I think back to John's point, why wouldn't you be on LinkedIn? I mean, what are you hiding? Right? It's not to say that you have to take pictures of every single meal that you have and every single step that you take. Right? That's not about that. And I think you don't have to be on Twitter and Facebook and everything else, but I think as business people, the very least you should do is have a look at why, what your LinkedIn strategy is and what updates you want to send and what provide for most of us, it's about digital footprints, right? So some of us in this room have a larger digital footprint than others. We might intend to do that, right? Some of us, it might be unfortunate because we didn't intend to do that and we've done something that's been caught up and it's been followed through. But I think that one of the things as leaders, as sales leaders, as marketing leaders, or as CEOs, you need to have your own sort of personal digital strategy. You need to understand, and it needs to be deliberate. It can't be by accident. If you choose not to do something, that's absolutely fine, but do it out of choice and do it consciously, not because you don't know or you haven't listened or you haven't understood. And if you don't understand some of the things that your organisation are coming to you with, go find out. Actually, it's your job to find out. It's your job to be relevant. And I don't think there's any organisation, and I talk to governments, I work with NGOs, I talk to B2C, I work with B2B, I don't think there's any organisation, type of organisation I'm not having a conversation with that contains the word digital. Right? So everybody is struggling with, how do I make digital, whatever that word means, relevant to my organisation? Well, it starts with you.
Please, Crystal.
So I think it's very interesting what all the other panelists have shared on what they think about being on social media, being on LinkedIn and all that. And I think something that is very important for us to understand is that people never buy brands. People never buy, oops. Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah.
You can use Andrew's microphone there, we can pass that around.
Okay, so the thing which I wanted to share was this. People don't buy from brands, people buy from people within organizations. People want to see some kind of thought leadership, your opinions, your authenticity coming out online. If you do a Google search, for instance, on someone that you want to look out for, and you see that in all the search results, the relevant search result doesn't point to what you're looking for, will you trust the seller? Right? So I think that's one point. And I think if you can't gain that part, going back to the point of gamification, there is no point in being on social media per se. I was just having a conversation last week with the chief data scientist at LinkedIn, who's based out in Australia. And it was a very interesting conversation because he was sharing with me on how there's so many different LinkedIn tools that actually tell you so much about different people. And it's astounding to know how much the internet has on information about you. So if you can't look to influence that part, because the internet has given us a new democracy that no one has ever hoped or had before. If you can't gain that part yourself, you can't influence people. You can't accumulate significant social intelligence. And you can't hope to even use things like social media tools to do listening, to do data mining, to do filtering, or whatever. So that's just my take.
Thank you. Please, Andrew.
I just have one last thing to add. I think the fastest way, the shortest path for any company to gain huge online presence on social media space is for the CEO to have the strong personal branding. I think that will carry a company very far because people like to hear from you. Your silent comment on Twitter, your blog will be extremely interesting. I was just sitting in the office of one of the transport company, I won't say which one again, in his office, with the C-level executive. And when he searched his designation, almost on the first page of Google, almost everything is not good. And he asked me a question, Andrew, can you make all this disappear? And he said, you can answer me two questions. First, are you willing to do anything? No. Are you willing to say something? No. Then I can't help you. And no one can help you because I actually did a search, and I think everybody is searching for his email. Yes, really, literally, everybody is searching for the CEO's email, want to tell him something, write him something. So why wait for people to tell you what they want to tell you? Share with them what is really is on your mind. Share to them about your company so that you have more brand ambassador for the company, even from people who are not working in the company. And I think those of us who are CEO here, CIO, COO, you have an awesome responsibility to carry the brand of your organization. Because people are going to look for you. LinkedIn recently has 1 million subscribers, I think just a few months ago, and Asia One did a very interesting article. They look for 40 most followed profile on LinkedIn in Singapore. By the way, Singapore has 1 million users. And you find that each and every one of them has more than 100,000 followers. So you know what? People love to follow you, see you. So create a presence. Don't miss out on opportunities.
Thank you.
I was going to add one thing, and just to make this kind of practical, to give you a practical example of why these things are important and why, when I say Buyer 2.0, I mean it is that 3 years ago now, and this is where the Huthwaite organization kind of had its own epiphany around this, is 3 years ago, the largest customer we acquired that year, a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing organization. When they became our customer, we talked to them about the process that they went through in selecting us as their vendor of choice. And what they told us was very interesting, and it completely changed our how we think about the market, how we think about buyers. Because they told us that it was actually a year before that they had decided that they needed to undertake a sales performance improvement initiative. So they put together a team within the organization, and they did some research, and they drew up a list of about 10 to 11 organizations that they thought could help them. And then they each took a couple of those organizations, and they said, go off and find out everything you can about these people. Find out their reputation, find out about their products and services, all of that. With the one caveat, and that's not to engage directly with any of these organizations, because when we finally engage with them, we want to do so from a position of strength, of knowing a lot about them so that we can have a more valuable conversation. So they spent about 8 months researching these 11 organizations, and after 8 months they whittled it down to 3 organizations that they were going to contact. So there's a couple of points there. Number one is 11 companies, including ourselves, were involved in a sales process for a year that we didn't know anything about. And 8 of those companies still don't know that they were in that sales process because they got dumped out of it without anybody ever contacting them. And then we went on and we actually ended up getting the business. And as we discussed it with them, part of the reason why the 3 organizations at the end were selected was because they had the most expansive presence online, and they were actually able to facilitate the self-discovery process that the buyer was going through. So as the buyer went out and did their research, they were able to find out about their products and services, they were able to read their blogs, they were able to see their YouTube sites, they were able to gather all of this information. They were able to review their LinkedIn groups, see how they viewed the world, what they did. They were able to understand who their customers were. They were able to reach out to their customers in their network and do this incredible amount of self-discovery, so that when they actually made contact, that we immediately could get down to the business of figuring out how we could help them, and they understood a lot about us. So it's really practical and tangible. Is that, I mean, each of you in the room today, including ourselves, are very, very likely to be deep in sales processes that we know nothing about. And we have the choice, either we can facilitate that self-discovery process, or we can be blissfully ignorant, and we can be dumped out of sales processes that we don't know anything about. So it really behooves us to make it easy for buyers to go through a process that doesn't necessarily involve us directly engaging with them for part of the sales process.
Crystal?
The mic was happily passed to me. This is a question that I often get as well. Is there any ROI in social media? And my point is this. ROI is a financial metric. So before you think about social media ROI, you need to think about what is the ROI that you want to get out of your entire purpose of engaging on social media. Is it for sales? Is it for content? Is it for thought leadership? Is it for being more efficient? Is it for lead generation? Or whatever. Then you can get a social media ROI. Because, can I ask you guys something? Have you guys ever come across something called a TV ROI or a radio ROI? If there is a newspaper ROI, I don't think it'd be very high. Would you agree with that? So, I think it's very important for us to understand what is the business ROI that we want to achieve, and how can social media help us to get there. Because I think that a lot of organizations, I mean, even the different brands that I have consulted on in my previous role and right now, we often think about being on social media just because everybody is there. We think in a very myopic fashion, we think of it in a very tactical way. But we don't think about how it connects to different parts of our organization. We don't think about how we can actually holistically combine everything together to make us and our organization better, faster, and stronger. This is what I always like to say, better, faster, and stronger. How do you use social media to resonate with your consumer, to be relevant, to get desired reach, and then you'll get ROI? Is it because of efficiency? Is it because of I don't know, savings, media savings, or whatever? It can be a lot of different things, but you have to determine it yourself as an organization. Don't blame it on the different platforms that you want to engage, because everything has a limiting factor, even social media platforms. So it can't do everything. It's not a cure for cancer, it's not a cure for world hunger, that's what I like to say. And if you don't have a purpose for being on social media platforms, my suggestion is don't be on it, because social media is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and many people think it's a sprint. Many people are obsessed with vanity metrics. I want to get 50,000 likes on Facebook. I want to get 100,000 followers on Twitter. If I had $1 for every time someone tells that to me, I'll be very rich right now. So I'm like, don't think about the vanity metrics. Think about your business metrics, then you get your ROI.
Thank you. Who else would like to add? Marco, please.
In the sense I've got the microphone.
Very good.
So I think that a couple of observations. I absolutely agree with everything that Crystal has said in terms of it's very difficult. There isn't like one sort of social media ROI. The reality is that certainly for those of you who are CEOs, or those of you that will be pitching to the CEO for investment dollars, you need some form of proxy or some form of tangible metric that will allow you to validate that investment. The difficulty is that there's a lot of digital pollution at the moment. So it's very difficult to attribute specifically this particular campaign or this particular activity resulted in this outcome, and therefore I can measure it. That's the bad news. The good news is that increasingly analytics is providing us with better, cleaner, a way through some of that fog, through some of that pollution. So I think if you look at the sort of gravitational pull that's happening between content, commerce, and community, you're seeing the ability to do social selling, and I don't now mean influencing, a sales force using social media for selling, but I mean actually on your social properties there are calls to actions to buy. So there are some ways that you can actually attribute directly in revenue numbers or in activity or in sentiment or in engagement. And what you have to look at with social media is not often the hard numbers, because it's sometimes difficult to justify the investment you might have to make to get a sale, but you have to look in terms of actually what it creates for you in terms of reach, in terms of network, in terms of influence, in terms of reputation. These are intangibles, and sometimes they're difficult to measure. But increasingly we're seeing, if you look at even things like, and I'm not here pushing platforms, but if you look at some of the, for example, the Marketing Cloud and Adobe, they've integrated their social media product into, their analytics product, into their content product. So what you're beginning to see now is a way that you can actually start to gain some specific metrics and analytics around activity. And that's the best proxy you're probably going to get in the short term.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panelists a real warm welcome. Congratulations. Thank you for your comments. And audience, I will ask you if you can please post your comments or your questions online, and we'll ask the panelists to respond to those, whether it's in the context of this forum or afterwards. We'll ask the panelists to please respond to your individual questions that you might have. I want to turn the time over to John Golden for just a few minutes, maybe we can swap places, and then we'll wrap up just prior to 9:30 with a few door prizes. John Golden.
Well, thank you, everybody, especially thanks to the panelists. This is we did these in Australia a few months ago, and this is even an evolution on the discussion there. So it just shows the more people you bring into the conversation, the more perspectives you start to get. And this is it's a fascinating area because it's very challenging for all of us. I was recently putting together something for the book that's coming out, and I read this quote by the guy Subcomandante Marcos, who led the Zapatista revolution in 1994 in Mexico. And he has this great quote where he says, "Sorry for the inconvenience, but this is a revolution." And I just thought that is so applicable to this, because this is a massive inconvenience to the way we've traditionally done business and the way we're set up to do business. I mean, social media is a huge, it's a huge disruption, and we really have to, get on top of it. I mean, you've seen from our research, and I won't labor this, but people are using social media for business. They're using it to reach out and make connections. They're using it to create personal brand. They're using it to generate value for customers. And one of the toughest parts about this is that, and especially for salespeople, is that you've got to understand that in this social media and social selling world, you have to provide value initially without expecting anything in return. And we've all grown up in this give-to-get culture, right? Over, throughout our careers, it's like, I will give you some information as long as you give me something in return. And that's always been the way it has been. And then when technology took over, like marketing automation systems, we were able to automate that. So, if you want my white paper, well, I'm going to get your information from you. You're going to have to give me your name and your email and your phone number, and I'm going to harass you. Immediately it's going to go to a salesperson who's going to call you 10 seconds later, which is why I always give my neighbour's phone number. No, don't actually give the person 2 doors down, because it's never a good idea to upset your neighbour too much. But the point being that that's no longer, you can't operate like that any longer, because I can get that information. I guarantee you, whatever information you're trying to hold back, I can find that information somewhere. It may take me a little time, I may have to go to other people, but I can get that information. So all you are really doing now is annoying me. And again, as a buyer, it's not a good strategy to annoy your buyers. So the more you hold back, the more you restrict access to valuable information that can help a buyer in their buying process and in their self-discovery process, the more you hold that back, the more you are annoying and switching off that buyer, and you're going to drive that buyer to somewhere else, to somebody else who is more open with it. So again, sorry for the inconvenience, but it's a revolution. And we have to learn that you have to be able to provide value without expectation of getting something back immediately. And you have to have confidence in your products and in your services and your solutions and what you have to offer. And realize that that's the key now, is that you have to have that confidence to be able to facilitate the buyer's self-discovery process. However, the problem is, most people don't know how to maximize the use of this. Most people don't know how to create the right message, because we're not skilling up our people. I mean, when you did that straw poll earlier, and only 5% feel that they have adequate training. This is not simply an issue for sales. I know this is a social selling forum. This is an organizational challenge, because you have to equip your organization in order. You've got to teach marketing that they have to be able to engage in a more personal, buyer-focused way. They have to be able to provide information, take down the gated forms, the gateway, stop all that nonsense. You also have to have sales and marketing working much closer together. If marketing are good at messaging, they need to help teach salespeople how to be good at messaging. You need to provide guidelines for your salespeople, for those people who are engaging online, so that they're working within some framework that they understand. So it's not a Wild West free-for-all, right? So the emerging trends, as you can see, is, as I just referenced, salespeople struggling with creating the right messages. Discipline is required, and that, as I said, is an organizational thing. And I think organizations need to make this decision that if you focus on the buyer and you look at things from a buyer perspective, the whole thing is to make it easy for your buyer to operate in the way that they want to operate. And if you do that, then you will give the right direction to your marketing teams, you give the right direction to your sales teams, you'll give the right direction to your customer service people, to anybody who engages with the buyer, whether it's directly, indirectly, or whether it's through social platforms. You've got to look at things through the lens of the buyer. Our philosophy and our approach to social selling on its own is, first of all, is it has to become an integral part of how you operate, your daily operating rhythm. So you have to actually, begin a process where you have a daily discipline on how you leverage social media. Again, and it's not to promote yourself, it's to help your buyer, right? And that should be your frame of reference all the time. You need to inspire and educate. And that's the other thing as well, as I said at the very beginning, is, don't just share things randomly, because that's not creating value. Or as my mother used to say to me, if you've got nothing to say, don't say it. Right? She still says that to me. And I can take her advice. But, I mean, the whole idea is that, is if you have nothing of value to share, or you're not adding something of value, or providing something of value, don't do it for the sake of thinking, okay, oh, it's been 20 minutes since I tweeted or since I posted something. And to some degree, I think some of the technology has not been helpful, because if you look at Huthwaite and things like that, where you can put tons and you can create all your tweets and you can time them so they just go out like that. I mean, I don't think that's helpful. I think, as Marco said, digital pollution, I think they've been great at adding to digital pollution, because, again, just because I can doesn't mean I should. So you need to use the technology sparingly, and again, look at, am I doing something that's creating value, or am I simply adding to noise pollution? So develop your own brand, become a micro-marketer. You really have to look at yourself now as a salesperson, as a marketing person, as you represent your organization's brand just as much as the brand itself does. And that's why we said earlier, it's important that everybody at all levels of the organization realize that they are now ambassadors for the organization, because that is how people view you now. They don't view you as a name and as a logo and as a set of products. They now look at you as a collection of people, because they can access and find out who you are. So you've got to remember that you're now representing that brand. And find the platform technique that works best for you. And the model that we adopt here is quite a simple one. The first one is to search, and that's where you become the researcher, really understand what's going on, what's important to your buyer, what's happening in the industry, what's happening in their segment, what's of importance to them, what are they talking about. So it's a real discipline to hold back and look and do that research. And I know that's difficult sometimes, and it also raises challenges for sales management. And again, as I say, this is organizational issues. If you come across your salesperson sitting in the office and they're on LinkedIn and they're there's a tendency to think, well, what are you doing? Why aren't you on the phone? Why aren't you out calling a customer? You know, what's going on? You have to rethink that and realize that you have to give your salespeople the space to actually be able to do this, because otherwise you're defeating the whole purpose of it. So the research element has to become something that's important. Then the listen, you know, so when you find out where your people are, what the issues are, then go and find out where they are, the groups that they're hanging out in. There's nothing worse than seeing, you know, sellers belonging to their own groups, like other sellers, and you're saying, well, what's the point of that? You want to belong to the groups that your buyers belong to, because that's where you can actually listen and understand, and that's eventually where you can share and create value. And then if you can credential yourself to creating value, then you can engage directly with them and you can advance the sales process. Because that's the other important thing to take away, is that this isn't just for the sake of it. At the end of the day, social selling, the goal is actually to sell something. So at some stage, your goal has to be to actually engage with the buyer. But you have to earn that right by going through this very deliberate and disciplined process in order to do so. And that's the key takeaway, I think, today, is that, number one, be deliberate, two, be disciplined, and three, remember that this is a challenge for your organization, not just for individual sellers, not just for marketing, and it all is driven by the buyer. So think Buyer 2.0, think of how your buyers want to be serviced, and the best way of understanding that is go talk to your customers. Go ask them how they want to execute their buying process nowadays, and then see how you can facilitate that in the optimum fashion. So again, I'd like to thank Marco, Crystal, Andrew for helping us and coming out here today and being such great panelists and providing such great insight. And I look forward to all of you continuing this conversation through Twitter and we'll be setting up some other formats and venues for you to be able to continue this conversation. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot we can talk about here in a panel format, but there's a lot more that you guys can actually bring to the equation and help each other. And again, it's all about sharing value and insights, because this is a whole brand new world that we're all in. And you know, despite some of us trying to pass ourselves off as experts, there are no real experts in this. You know, we're all learning together, and I think it's an exciting time.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this morning. If I could please ask you to start to fill out your evaluation forms. Let us know how we did today. Please give some feedback for the panelists. And before you leave, we've got a few door prizes. So, Miss Laura, John, could you please draw for me 3 business cards? 5. There's 1. Okay, the first gift is going to be a book pack. It's the book 24/7 from Andrew Chow, and Social Media 24/7, and the book from John Golden, Winning the Battle for Sales. And our first winner is Kimberly Yap. Kimberly, are you here with us? Thank you. Come on up, please. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I actually drew out Andrew's card, and I think you probably don't want to copy your own books, so I cast that one aside.
Okay. All right. Our next winner is Kaz from Quip. Kaz, come on up, please. Now's not the time. You are the winner of a book pack as well.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming out this morning.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. And our next winner is from Ericsson, Raymond So. Raymond, are you here? Good morning, Raymond. Thank you and happy reading.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much. We have another winner, this one from ESI, Mr. Rayad Haddad. The book pack, please.
Sorry, I was in the back.
All the way from the back. We spotted you and grabbed your card.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you all as well.
There you go. And our final winner for the grand prize is 2 seats to our social selling program. It's a virtual program that your attendees can be from anywhere really in the world when we conduct it on a public basis. The winner is from Ericsson, Miss Catherine Coe. Catherine, congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine. Congratulations. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a warm thank you for our panelists and to yourselves. Really appreciate your time. If you'll just leave your evaluations on the table, we'll collect them from there, and we'll be hanging around to do a little networking and answer any questions, as well as keeping an eye on the Twitter feed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.